She had walked through courthouse doors 1,000 times before. This was supposed to be routine. Another client, another case, another chance to prove that the system, broken as it was, could still bend towards something resembling justice. But the moment Jasmine Cole stepped into that police station, she felt it. A heaviness in the air, thick and suffocating, like the building itself was holding its breath. The officers at the front desk didn't look up when she approached. Their eyes stayed fixed on paperwork, on screens, on anything but her. When she finally spoke, gave her name, stated her purpose, the desk sergeant hesitated. Not because he didn't recognize her. Attorney Jasmine Cole was one of the most formidable criminal defense lawyers in the city. He hesitated because he knew exactly who she was, and he knew exactly whose son she was there to defend. The son of Judge Raymond Harding. Jasmine had built her career on precision, on preparation, on walking into rooms that didn't want her there and making them listen anyway. But standing in that station, waiting for clearance to see her client, she felt something unfamiliar creep up her spine. Not fear, not doubt, something older, something she thought she'd buried years ago. The memory of a courtroom, a younger version of herself, and a judge who had made sure she understood her place. What she didn't know yet, what she couldn't have known, was that this case would crack open a truth that had been sealed for 2 decades. A truth that had stolen years from someone's life. A truth that had protected a powerful family's reputation. And a truth that was about to be exposed by the one person they never imagined would find it. This is a story about justice, about the weight of the past, and about what it costs to choose truth over everything else, even when that truth could destroy you. Jasmine Cole never planned to take the case. When her assistant buzzed her office that afternoon and said Judge Raymond Harding's office was on the line, her first instinct was to refuse. That name carried 15 years of weight. 15 years since he had humiliated her in open court during her very first trial as a junior attorney. She was 26 then, hungry to prove herself, brilliant in ways that made older lawyers uncomfortable, and black in a profession that too often treated her presence as provisional, something to be tolerated rather than celebrated. Judge Harding had made sure she knew where she smissed her motions without reading them, cut her off mid-argument. When she objected, respectfully, carefully, the way she'd been taught, he threatened her with contempt, in front of the entire courtroom, in front of her client, in front of her mentor, who later pulled her aside and said what so many had said before: "You have to be twice as good and half as loud. That's how this works." Jasmine never forgot that day. Never forgot the coldness in his eyes, the comfort he took in his power, the way he wielded the bench like a weapon. She promised herself she would never give him another thought, that she would rise so high, achieve so much, that his name would become irrelevant to her story. But now his office was calling her, asking for help. She picked up the line. The voice on the other end was tight, strained, barely holding itself together. Margaret, the judge's assistant. She explained the situation quickly, efficiently. Judge Harding's son had been arrested. Assault. A fight outside a downtown bar. The victim was pressing charges. It was serious. And the judge, the man who had once dismissed Jasmine as beneath his attention, was now asking for her specifically. He said she was the best. The best. Jasmine closed her eyes, felt the bitter irony settle in her chest. Funny how power works. How those who wield it rarely see the people beneath them until they need something, until their world collapses and suddenly the person they dismissed becomes the only one who can save them. She should have said no. Every fiber of her professional pride told her to decline. To let Judge Harding scramble. To let him feel, just once, what it was like to need someone who didn't owe him a thing. But something deeper than pride made her say yes. Not because she owed him anything. Not because she'd forgiven him, but because she owed herself something. The chance to walk into his crisis as the woman she'd become. As the lawyer who could have been great even without his interference, but who became undeniable in spite of it. And maybe, just maybe, the chance to see him the way he once saw her. Powerless, desperate, human. The county jail smelled the way it always did. Disinfectant trying to cover something it could never quite erase. Fear, maybe. Desperation. the residue of broken lives pressed into concrete and steel. Jasmine had been here hundreds of times, knew the guards by name, knew which doors stuck, which hallways echoed, which rooms gave you just enough privacy to hear your client break down. But walking that fluorescent corridor toward the interview room, she felt something she hadn't felt in years: uncertainty. Not about her skill, not about her ability to build a defense, but about why she was here, what was driving her. Was this about proving something to a man who would never apologize? Or was it about something truer, the belief that everyone, no matter who their father was or what power protected them, deserved a defense? She didn't have the answer yet. The guard led her to a small room with scratched plexiglass and bolted chairs. And then Derek Harding walked in, 23 years old, tall, clean-cut, the kind of handsome that came with privilege and comfort. But his eyes were red, swollen. He'd been crying. That much was clear. Jasmine sat down across from him. Derek didn't look at her at first. His gaze stayed fixed on his hands, on the table, anywhere but her face. She let the silence stretch, let him sit with it. Finally, she spoke. "Your father sent me." Her voice was calm, professional, stripped of emotion. Derek's jaw tightened. "I didn't ask him to." "I know." More silence. Then Derek looked up. "You're Jasmine Cole." "I am." "My dad talked about you once, said you were one of the smartest attorneys he'd ever seen in his courtroom, and that he'd made a mistake." The words hung in the air between them. Jasmine wasn't expecting that. For a moment, she didn't know how to respond. A mistake. 15 years later, and that was what he'd called it, a mistake. As if humiliating a young black woman in front of her peers was just an oversight. A bad day. She pushed the feeling down, recovered quickly. "Tell me what happened, Derek." And so he did. He'd been at a bar, downtown, celebrating. He'd just passed the bar exam, was about to start clerking for a federal judge. His future was bright, clean, full of promise. He was with friends, drinking, laughing, the kind of night that felt weightless. Then a man approached their group. Started talking. The conversation shifted, got tense. Derek said he tried to walk away, tried to de-escalate, but the man grabbed him, shoved him, and Derek shoved back. The man fell, hit his head on the curb. There was blood, sirens, flashing lights, and Derek was arrested on the spot. He swore it was self-defense, swore he hadn't wanted any of it. But here was the problem. The victim was a young black man named Terrence Mills. And the witnesses? All white, all friends of Derek's, all willing to corroborate his version of events. Jasmine leaned back in her chair, let the story settle. Then asked the question that mattered most. "Did you start that fight, Derek?" He looked at her, didn't blink. No, she believed him, or at least she believed that he believed it. But belief wasn't evidence, and in her experience, the truth was rarely as simple as one person's memory. Jasmine didn't take cases to lose them, so she did what she always did. She worked, pulled surveillance footage from the bar, interviewed witnesses, requested medical records for Terrence Mills, combed through police reports looking for inconsistencies, gaps, anything that didn't fit, and piece by piece, the story began to crack. The surveillance footage showed Derek and his friends inside the bar, laughing, drinking, rowdy, but not violent. Then Terrence Mills appeared in the frame. He approached the group, said something. One of Derek's friends responded. Terrence turned to leave, but one of the friends, a young man named Brett, reached out and grabbed Terrence by the arm. Terrence yanked away. Brett shoved him, and then Derek stepped in. But the footage didn't show clearly who threw the first real punch. The angle was wrong, the lighting worse, and when Terrence hit the ground, the camera didn't catch it. Jasmine watched that footage 20 times, froze it, rewound it, watched it again, and every time she saw the same thing. A situation that could have been self-defense, or a situation where a group of young men, emboldened by alcohol and privilege, picked a fight they knew they could win. She needed more. So she went to see Terrence Mills. He was still in the hospital when she arrived. Fractured skull, severe concussion, broken ribs. The doctors said he'd survive, but recovery would be long, painful. Jasmine walked into that room, and the first thing she saw was his mother, sitting beside his bed, holding his hand. Her face was lined with exhaustion and something deeper. Grief, maybe, or rage held so tightly it looked like stillness. She looked up when Jasmine entered, and for a moment neither of them spoke. Then Terrence's mother said, "You're his lawyer, the white boy's lawyer." Jasmine nodded. "I am." You think he's innocent. I think everyone deserves a defense. That's the law." The woman's eyes hardened. The law didn't protect my son. Jasmine had no answer for that, because she was right. Terrence spoke then. His voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. "I didn't start anything. I was just trying to leave. One of them said something, called me a word. I ignored it, started walking. Then someone grabbed me. I pushed him off, and then I don't remember. Just pain and sirens." Jasmine thanked them both, left the hospital, sat in her car for 20 minutes, staring at nothing, just thinking. Derek said it was self-defense. Terrence said he was attacked. Both stories held truth. But the whole truth, the real truth, was still buried. And Jasmine had a sinking feeling that if she kept digging, she would uncover something no one wanted her to see. If this story is resonating with you, take a moment to subscribe. We're telling stories that matter, stories that don't always make the headlines, and your support helps us keep going. Jasmine couldn't let it go. Something wasn't adding up. Not just about the fight itself, but about everything surrounding it. About Judge Harding. About why he had called her after all these years. Why now? Why, after 15 years of silence, did he suddenly think she was the best? So she did something she rarely did. She went digging into the judge's past, court records, old cases, newspaper archives. She told herself she was looking for patterns, for context, for anything that might explain the man he'd become. But deep down, she knew she was looking for something else, some piece of history that connected them beyond that courtroom 15 years ago. And that's when she found it. 22 years ago, Raymond Harding was still a prosecutor. Ambitious. Relentless. Building a reputation as someone who didn't lose. He put a man away for armed robbery and assault. The evidence was circumstantial, but the case was airtight. The man was convicted, sentenced to 25 years. His name was Vincent Cole. Jasmine stared at the screen, read the name again. Vincent Cole. Her hands started to shake. Vincent Cole was her father. She hadn't seen him since she was 7 years old. Her mother told her he was in prison, that he'd made mistakes, that he wasn't coming home. Jasmine grew up believing her father was guilty, believed it so deeply that she built her entire identity around being different, around proving that she wasn't defined by his choices. She became a lawyer, in part, to distance herself from his legacy, to show the world that she was nothing like him. But now, sitting in her office, staring at a 22-year-old case file, she saw something she'd never seen before. The evidence was thin, witness testimony inconsistent. Her father had maintained his innocence, said he was home the night of the robbery. His alibi was his 7-year-old daughter, but the jury didn't believe him, or maybe they just believed the prosecutor more. Raymond Harding had painted Vincent Cole as dangerous, a threat to society, and the jury gave him 25 years. He died in prison 10 years later. Heart attack. Jasmine was 17. She never got to say goodbye. And now she was defending the son of the man who took her father away. Jasmine could have walked away, could have told Derek to find another lawyer, could have buried what she found and moved on with her life. But that wasn't who she was. That wasn't why she became a lawyer. So she did something bold. She requested a meeting with Judge Harding. Not in his chambers, not in his world. In her office, on her ground. He came. When he walked through her door, he looked smaller than she remembered. Older, tired, but still carrying that air of authority, that assumption that he belonged wherever he stood. He sat down across from her, began to speak. "Miss Cole, thank you for taking Derek's case. I know it wasn't easy. You prosecuted my father." Silence. Judge Harding's face went pale. "What?" "Vincent Cole. 22 years ago. Armed robbery. You were the lead prosecutor." He stared at her. "You're Vincent's daughter." "I am." For the first time in 15 years, Jasmine saw something in Judge Harding's eyes she'd never seen before. Shame. "Miss Cole, was he guilty?" The question hung in the air. Judge Harding looked down at his hands. "I believed he was." "That's not what I asked." A long pause. Then, quietly, "I don't know. The evidence was circumstantial. But I was young, ambitious. I wanted to win." Jasmine's voice was ice. "You destroyed my family to build your career. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't bring him back." Judge Harding's voice cracked. "I know, and I've carried that weight every day since. But my son, Jasmine, my son is innocent. Please, don't let my mistakes cost him his future." Jasmine stared at him, and for a moment she felt the rage she'd buried for years, the rage at a system that had taken her father, at a man who had humiliated her, at a world that demanded she be twice as good for half the recognition. But then she felt something else. Clarity. She wasn't doing this for Judge Harding. She was doing it for Derek, and for Terrence, and for the truth, whatever it was, because that's what her father would have wanted. Not revenge. Justice. The trial moved forward. Jasmine fought for Derek the way she would have fought for anyone, presented the surveillance footage, cross-examined witnesses, built a defense brick by brick, and then something unexpected happened. One of Derek's friends, Brett, the one who had grabbed Terrence first, broke down on the stand. Under cross-examination, the weight of the lie became too much. He admitted the truth. He had started the fight. He had used a slur. He had shoved Terrence, and when Terrence fought back, Derek had stepped in to stop it. But in the chaos, Terrence fell, and Brett's friends, including Derek, had lied to protect him. Derek was cleared. Brett was charged. Terrence got justice. And Jasmine stood in that courtroom and realized something. The system was broken, would always be broken in ways that were hard to fix. But people, individuals, could still choose to do what was right, even when it was hard, even when it cost them. After the trial, Derek approached her. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for everything. And I'm sorry. About your father. I didn't know." Jasmine nodded. "I know. Is there anything I can do?" She thought for a moment. "Be better than your father. That's all." Derek nodded and walked away. Jasmine never got the apology that mattered from Judge Harding, never got her father back, but she got something else. She got to prove to herself, to the world, that she could stand in the fire and not burn, that she could face the man who destroyed her family and still choose truth over revenge. That's the thing about justice. It's not always loud, not always satisfying. Sometimes it's just quiet grace. The decision to do what's right, even when no one's watching, even when it hurts. If this story moved you, take a moment. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment telling us about a time you had to choose between anger and grace. We're listening, because every story matters, every voice counts, and every truth, no matter how buried, deserves to see the light.